Welcome to The Lift. I'm Mark Evans, joined by my co-host, James MacArthur. And today we're joined by Anne Pao, founder of Ignite Consulting. With over 20 years shaping go-to-market strategy, operations, and analytics for some of the fastest growing tech and healthcare companies, Anne has helped scale businesses from $25 million to over $5 billion in revenue. She's led companies like Tubular Labs, Airship, Keep, and Maven Clinic, and now partners with startups and scale-ups to build GTM foundations that drive sustainable growth. Welcome to the podcast, Anne.
Thank you so much, Mark. And James, I saw you going, bow, bow. Yes, that is how you say my last name. And Mark was kind enough to ask. I saw that clicking for you.
It's been years that I've been saying it wrong.
I have people who've known me 20 years, don't even know my last name is Bao. So it's all good.
As someone who has an exceptionally easy last name, I've never dealt with that, and that's on me for not asking the question. So I'm happily enlightened. I'm ecstatic that you're here with us today. Tell me a little bit about something that you've done recently that you're really excited for. What are you super proud of that you've done recently?
I'm going to list two that they're not at opposite ends. One thing I'm immensely proud of is I am a very proud mom of two. One just turned 6 and one is about to turn 8. Honestly, a lot of credit goes to them as individuals and also to my husband. On the flip side, while we're here talking about work, I do work in the RevOps space, but the other thing I'm most proud of, even though it hasn't happened yet, I co-lead the Women of Pavilion group. It's an 1,100 person group. And we are hosting our second Women's Summit. We are 95% sold out.
Let's talk about your RevOps work and what you're doing on that side. What are the things that you're truly embracing right now that you're really excited about?
I was a VP of RevOps in a lot of different startups. I'd been in operations for the majority of my career. About 2.5 years ago, I decided to go out on my own. I know there's a lot of fractionals out there. Mark and I were saying before we joined, there's also a lot of fractional hate, a lot of fractional love, but we won't talk about that right now. As a CEO told me, he's, oh, you're different, Anne. You're a career fractional. I didn't know what that meant either. But apparently means I've chosen to do this. It isn't my short stint. I have walked away from and turned away full-time roles in-house as executive leaders to do this full-time. I have worked with a couple seed stage companies, all the way A, B, C, D. I've had a couple public companies. Usually I work with them fractionally, part-time, to either stand up their revenue operations or go-to-market operations function. Maybe they have a function already and up-level it. Sometimes I'm there to advise the existing leader and be a thought partner to them. Sometimes I coach much lighter weight. You asked, what am I really excited about? I want to talk about the fact that what most excites me about the work that I do is I'm a very deep learner, very curious. I was that person who got kicked out of school because I had way too many credits. I studied engineering for 2 years and I was like, that's too restrictive. I'm going to study economics. I finished that major. What's next? I'm going to add international development. Oh, I finished that. What's next? I'm going to add a minor. Get out of here. You've done too much. You have 222 credits. Our max is 232. Leave. That has stuck with me in terms of deeply wanting to understand how things work and how things work from lots of different angles. In our world, what a better place to be than RevOps, right? You get to work across so many different parts of the business with so many different parts of the business. I think I'd be curious what you have to say, but I think the real secret sauce is the person who can really help integrate and gel those functions together and get them all talking the same language. Now, as a fractional person, I don't just do that with one company. I mean, since launching, I think I've had 15 different clients, from legal tech to nonprofit tech to, of course, SaaS, to health tech to I just landed my first cybersecurity company. And I'm like, ooh, I have to go deep learning as to what these companies do and how the essentials and fundamentals of go-to-market apply, and then which ones have to really be customized to make sense. That is so exciting for somebody who is a voracious learner.
Your learning journey in college sounds like my career, which I've been finance, marketing, sales. I love the way you describe fractional work. One of the best and worst parts of it is the incessant context switching, deep dive discovery and analysis at every single corner. I think it's fascinating for people of the generalist mindset to go through and see each of those orgs in a separate way and not necessarily dive too far deep into that business systems rabbit hole.
It's a real trap. We could talk about that. Every RevOps client, I'm drowning in systems and this, because your role isn't just systems, by the way.
I think it's fascinating, and it's one of the hardest things to balance is when you're looking at all of these different clients. My question is, how do you think about best practices when you get there? As we all know, every single client is their own special little snowflake. The best practices that works for one are literally going to kill another. How do you think about that? How do you balance that as a professional coming in and talking to these teams? Let's be honest, every executive just wants you to tell them exactly what they have to do to be successful.
Mm-hmm. I have a slightly different perspective. The perspective is that you can't just say, here's your MedPick thing, Chat GPT. I call my Chat GPT Clara. Clara spit it out and here it is. And I'm going to copy, paste it and put it in a deck and we're going to roll. No, that is not what I'm talking about. You have a foundational framework that the basics and the core, but according to first principles, you can come back to the same basic go-to-market fundamentals. And your sales process is generally going to follow the same arc. If we were talking about your marketing funnel, generally it's going to follow a similar arc. Now, maybe if you're PLG versus more inbound driven, or you don't even have a marketing engine, that's something different. But nobody just shows up and buys. You're going to go through an awareness and a research phase and getting the attention and hook. You're going to go through all of that, right? What I find is because I've now rolled out enough of these, 5 times in-house, 15 times out, I have 20 different scenarios where we were tackling a lot of the same problems. So I think while maybe the solutions are very distinct, the problems that they are solving at their core are similar and they're the same. The good news is I now have a library of different options that I can pull up the ones that seem most germane. I'm really listening on the ground and I'm saying, which solutions seem to be the most similar? And then what I do is I'm not just, here's your solution. Here's what I've seen work, but this is what I think is really matching up to your particular environment. These are the things that maybe aren't so clear. Help me get there. It's a very collaborative process that we go through. The other thing that I want to touch on is I think the language is so key. I was just reviewing for a client their existing sales process. I mean, from just the basics of, is the structure there? Is it not just here's an exit criteria? Sometimes I just see that, or here's a stage and they think that's a sales. No. So are there at least a stage, and have they thought about what is the buyer experiencing and what is the entry criteria and what's the exit criteria? I like to add in the activities because I found that sometimes sales reps, they're great. You've told me how to exit out of this, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do when I'm actually in the stage. These frames and components are really important. But as I was reviewing the sales process, the language was so generic. And by the way, this was created by the client, but somebody probably took some framework and just copy pasted and had very generic language. I think you have to take that generic language as a starting point, but then you have to drill in and make sure that the language, one, makes sense to the people, in this case, sales, because it's a sales process, who are having to adhere to it, and make sure that their language is represented back to them. So that's a lot of the work that I do.
It's thinking about best practices and then applying not even best practices. Everything is just a practice. You have a list of practices, and based on context, the best practice for them.
I'll share one, and I'd be curious to hear both your thoughts. It's in between that juncture of marketing and sales. I've encountered this, 4 or 5 times where there was the marketing funnel. And oftentimes we don't really know what happens. There's some leads, and then there's this thing called an MQL. And then somebody developed a lead score and we think they left the company. We have MQLs figured out. And then we just get them into the sales process. But what I've discovered in a number of organizations, and I've worked in really mature orgs that had very tight go-to-market engines, it was really clear who was doing what specifically. And I've had to introduce stage 0 into multiple orgs. And had people be like, what's the stage 0 thing? And I'm, what do you mean, what's a stage 0? It's your juncture in between your marketing and sales funnel. Sometimes I'm talking to people who have just never seen it before. This is their first run, right? They're, why would we need that? It's just going to go straight from MQL into the sales funnel. No, that's not how. You're just going to throw a bunch of junk over there, which is exactly what was happening. Where if you looked at the data, all of this junk was pushing through. And then they were wondering why there was this huge drop off and why nothing really got out of S1 or S2. I'm like, because you weren't even really doing deeper qualification as a sales rep. And we were maybe telling the reps to do deeper qualification, but we weren't telling them specifically how to do that. For me, it felt so simple. There's a really key juncture here, but it was just totally missed. And that is, for a lot of orgs, that was a best practice that was missing. Now, the components of when something entered stage 0 and what exited was nuanced. I had some where they were, you know what? We only want stage 0 if we're going to have a meeting booked. I had others where that's too gated. We want more to come in. So they did it from the point that if you were an outbound rep, you started to pursue a target account or others where you were responding back. But I think those nuances really have to be adapted to the business and the go-to-market model in that business.
If you think about new and the way we do it, ours is different than that. But the idea is still there's a gating step where MQL comes in. You need sales to look at that, go, yes, this is an SAL. This is an accepted lead. We accept you, lead.
Thank you for calling
then
it.
after go, okay, this is qualified. The part
Yes.
that I've never understood is when I go into an org, and we had this for a long time, and I think we might still have this, and I just need to go in there and nuke it. But we have an SQL step. And SQL step is an opportunity. Once you've qualified it, it's qualified. Off we go. You need the gating step between marketing and sales because marketing is throwing things over the fence.
You know what's going to happen. If marketing didn't get thrown under the bus on a podcast, did it really ever happen?
But marketing is throwing whatever they can, what they think fits over the fence. And then it's a job of the sales and marketing teams to work together in the old HubSpot Smarketing. Circa 2019 ran Smarketing as their thing. And they were, sales and marketing should talk to each other. Brilliant. Done. Yes, of course. But in the old marketing thing where sales and marketing need to collaborate, okay, what is the MQL definition actually? And what are they going to accept? And if you don't have alignment there, then everyone's just throwing things wherever they can.
You have to put the guardrails up. Mark, I want to hear from you because you're a marketing leader. I think about this, and one of my past clients, my head of revenue marketing, she was amazing. And we were building out their entire inbound funnel because surprise, no one knew what happened in it. She didn't know. Wait, what do you mean no one knows? Literally pull up the sleeves, get out the spreadsheet, map it out, get everybody aligned. We were talking about, are we going to do it on booked meeting or held? And she said something, I agreed with it. She said, no, the moment we pass that to sales, we have passed the baton. They are responsible for it. And I think what she got at was so key. We can't be mixing this muck. It has to be a clear baton pass in a relay. Your job is done. But Mark, you're the marketer on the call. I want to hear your thoughts.
My first comment is that when you throw marketing under the bus, it's 2 against 1. So it's really not a fair fight right now. So that's number one. Number two, it is about alignment. And it is about establishing the rules of engagement and knowing each party is doing and how that journey is going to happen so that you're efficient and, as important, successful. One of the great things about doing a podcast with James is I just don't know where the conversation is going to go. In theory, we have a structure that we try to follow, but it doesn't really work that well, but that's okay. But one thing that James and I have tried to do is really get into the nitty gritty and talk about successes and failures. I read recently that you just finished a 9-month engagement with Thinkific, which I'm proud to say is a Canadian company.
I've had 3 Canadian clients, believe it or not. Canadians love me. And I love them.
We'll make you an honorary Canadian. It sounded like a great, successful engagement. I'm sure they would love to hire you if they had the chance. What were you trying to do with Thinkific? What were their biggest challenges? Why did they bring you in? And what were the keys to success?
They were a wonderful client. I was there actually 7 months, just under, a little bit less than 9. So I was actually a Thinkific customer. Fun fact, a couple of years ago, before I went fractional, we implemented Thinkific to support our new hire onboarding journey for our go-to-market teams. So you were saying, James, we need to train these people. That was literally it. Who's going to train all these go-to-market professionals? We really need to train all these people. We can't just train sellers. We need to train all these marketers we're hiring. We need to train all these like SDRs and these CS people. So my team, I ran Enablement. It became go-to-market Enablement. We built out that new hire onboarding journey, and it was a wildly successful program, high NPS. And it wasn't just the Thinkific platform, but it was the work that my head of Enablement did in utilizing the platform. And it was also just how intuitive and easy it was and very quick to get up and running and very cost effective. I walked away from that being like, wow, that's a great platform. I'm going to use them again. And then Amanda Malco, who's an incredible CRO. She was at G2 before. Now she's a CRO that looks after sales, marketing, CS, commerce, RevOps. She pinged me probably around December, Jan, that said, hey, we're hiring for this role, a VP of go-to-market ops and strategy. Do you want it? Do you want to? I did think about it because she's pretty impressive, but I was, no, I think I'm good. But why don't I help you on an interim basis fractionally and help you hire that person? So they had some people in mind already. They've hired her. Her name is Nisha McMillan. She is wonderful. She's an amazing leader. So it was being part of that hiring committee. That took time, obviously. It was really getting a few initiatives off the ground. And I'm not saying anything that is, I think, not okay for me to talk about, helping them revamp their funnel, but really focused on their sales funnel, help them really upgrade their forecasting cadence so we could have more accuracy in how we forecast. They're a very high volume inbound business. I come from finance. I started my career in financial planning analysis. I used to manage a $200 million budget to 1% variance every quarter. I think anything can be forecasted. Call me crazy. Our world can never be forecasted. I'm like, yes, it can. Yes, it can. And it was really building off a lot of the work that was already in play, but just adding a little bit more rigor and structure to it. But additionally, it was also helping the team really get a handle around, they had a RevOps team, which was really great. But when we talked about that glue and that alignment layer of go-to-market operations and getting everybody on the same page as to these are the key rocks that we have to tackle. And it wasn't Anne's rocks. I was sitting there listening around for the rocks, noting them down, having lots of conversations at various leader levels, and then coming up with the first go-to-market operations roadmap, which, by the way, only got finalized with input from my peers, my VP of marketing, from my VP of CS and sales, from the CR, who is the ultimate blesser, but that had never happened before. And so as a result, getting this unit to start operating as a unit versus scattered siloed departments. The last thing I'll share, I mean, there were a number of different things, was heavy inbound business, but helping them really start to think about what outbound looks like. What does ABM look like? How does that integrate with target accounts? What should we even go after in terms of target accounts? And how do we really operationalize this? Again, it's not anything that is unique to a Thinkific. These are problems I've had to solve in multiple orgs. And again, it comes back to the same core problems that have to be solved that I think maybe just hit at different stages of your growth journey.
I love that. Every single company has the same growth journey where they hire a bunch of smart leaders. Those smart leaders go and start working on their own things. Those smart leaders hire a great team underneath them. They all of a sudden, okay, here's my operations thing that I need to run. All of a sudden, your organization's branching out and nothing's connecting the dots. That is the origin core driver for RevOps. Getting people on board, getting people into the right place is the most critical part of any RevOps journey. It's where we get to that systems trap you were talking about.
I want to say two things. One, it is not lost on me that this is something that generally when I go into an organization fractionally as their head of or their VP, interim VP, whatever you want to call it, does not exist every time and in-house. I was talking to a woman yesterday. We're just so over capacity and we don't know what we should be working on. We have all these people coming at us and my team can't be strategic because they're just putting out fires. How many times have you heard that story, James? Every single RevOps role. The good news is when I hear that, I'm not, oh crap, I'm good. I know this problem. I know this problem really well. And I'm a believer that it's not rocket science, right? I'm not saying these people aren't dumb at all. They're just overwhelmed. And sometimes, unfortunately or fortunately, it does require somebody a little bit more senior who has the edict, if you will, to go and say, we are going to do this and we are going to do this properly and we're going to bring structure forward. And this is what the process is going to look like. And I'm holding all of you accountable to be my partners in this journey. It's as simple as I do it in a spreadsheet. I listen, I capture all the inputs, I put in there, these are what links to our overarching OKRs, V2 Mom, company goals, whatever. This is what I think the strategic priority is. Generally, most of these things I've either implemented or my teams have implemented. So I can say, this is how long this takes. Of course, you can't do all of them at once. So we have to pick and choose which one we do together. That's when the hard parts come in. And then we get in there and it's as simple as I give all of my leaders, you get to vote. We'll have 60 things we could do. 60. We're not going to do all 60. Some of them are super minute. Some things we're never going to do. But here's everything I heard. Here's the things that I think you have asked for. Here's the things that you have not asked for that I think we should do. You all get to vote. And maybe you get to vote for 10. And then I look across and I'm like, what are the things that are really consistent across the board? Now, it's not always majority rule. Sometimes there are some things that get very low votes, but it is absolutely critical for the business, which is why if your thing did not get any votes, you have a chance to campaign to your peers and make your case together And that process it's a deep process. It can be a couple hour process. I did it with one client, Series B company, 25 million, moving towards doubling, strong product, worked with the VP of sales, VP of CS, VP marketing. I was their head of RevOps, did this exercise, and the head of CS had been there for 6 weeks. And this has been the most impactful 3 hours of my last 6 weeks at the company. Nobody had been in a room together talking about all of this at a level of detail. And Mark, you were saying specificity, right?
It's the data governance journey that we all have to go on, where you go into an organization, we're talking about MQLs and SQLs. Now, you go into an organization, getting the definitions of those things are going to be different every single place, every single leader. I think this is really interesting because it mirrors something I heard Cassie Young from Primary talk about a couple of years ago, which is it's the difference between power and authority, basically. Over the course of all of our time working at these companies, everyone develops their own kind of soft power within the organization. They develop their own ability to do things, but that does not necessarily equate to an executive authority. All of these smart people have the ability to come in and have that conversation, but they don't necessarily have the authority that someone who's brought in to solve that problem will have. How do you bridge that? The internal, external aspect.
Yes.
How would you recommend people take that on if they're in that position in an organization, or deal with the situation where they're working with a you or with you?
I think what maybe is underlying this, and tell me if I got it right, is very clear decision rights. Who has the decision rights to make at each of these levels? I worked for a CEO once, brilliant CEO. That thing where it was everyone got a vote, he did that. He took multiple companies through acquisition. So I learned that from him. I'm going to steal that from you, Ken Fine, if you're listening.
Ken.
So good in meetings. He would come in and he was such an amazing listener. I think he was also an ex-Marine sergeant, really by the book, very rigorous, but also deeply empathic leader. And he would just listen and let everyone talk. But before he does, he would set the stage and be, all right, this is what we're here to do. We're here to make XY decision. This is what I need you to all make. I'm going to listen, but I want to be clear for things that he had the decision. He's like, I want to be really clear. All of you, I need your input. But at the end of this is a decision that I own and I have the decision authority, which may mean I might make a decision that you disagree with. Then we will decide and we will commit and we will move on. I think that's so important. I was on a board once and we were hiring an executive director, and there were varying opinions about who we should hire and who we should not. I was in a meeting and I actually paused and I said, hey, to the executive chairwoman, I have a question. Who has the decision authority on this? Is this a communal decision that we are going to make together? Or are you having the ultimate authority? I want to get clarity for that. I think that's really important in high stakes decisions to clarify. Maybe it's no, all of you have to come to consensus. It's a jury, right? Or no, I'm going to hear all your things and I'm going to make the decision. I've been in roles where I have been, and I literally said this, I want all your inputs, but be clear, I'm making the decision and the decision will be final. And sometimes it's a little, whoa, she's powerful. But I think clarity is really important. People know it's time to get on the bus and move into execution mode, right?
It's basically gathering consensus, filtering, and it's almost the exact same approach you take when you're walking into an organization from a RevOps standpoint. It's the exact same approach where it's like you're gathering all of their processes. You're gathering everything. You're sorting them into the pieces that require immediate action, pieces that require further action. It's almost filtering the technical things that we do and thinking about it from gathering consensus, getting everyone's opinions on the right steps, collaborating with them to understand their opinions.
Layering it with my insights as well. Sometimes I'll go into orgs. We've talked about this and it's not working. We want you to know what we all think. We're pretty sure that we're doing here is not right. I want you to come to that conclusion and do enough homework and then come in and tell us what we should be doing. Sometimes I'll come and be like, here are all the recommendations. But as RevOps is a partnership, I can't just bash people over the head. And I've made the mistake of doing that in the past. I'm going to bash you over the head to what I think we should do. That plan does not do well. We all know it does not do well. Or I'm going to get you bought in. If I do it really well, I'm going to make them think that my plan is their plan. That's the best.
Inception is a beautiful strategy. I had a boss 9 years ago who would not do anything that wasn't his idea. our entire strategy was 2 weeks before we needed a decision made, we'd throw it out there as a hypothetical. And then the week before, we'd be like, I've been thinking about this, and this seems like an interesting article related to it. Eventually, they just start thinking about it, and you go, can we get a decision on this thing? And it's, yeah, I already told you what I wanted. And it's exactly what you said. But inception within organizations is incredibly powerful. Most often, you're walking into these organizations, people know what they need. They know what they need to do. It's just very often people don't necessarily have the will to do it. Or it's like a Jenga that someone's been pulling apart and stacking things on top of each other. And this is my final question. One of the things that has been concerning me, and we're both RevOps people, we're both very much on the strategy, but I'm also very into technical side too.
Yeah.
I'm seeing RevOps teams disappear from the world and being replaced with a confluence of go-to-market strategy on one side and then business systems on the other. What are you seeing, and what can revenue operators that are seeing this and are concerned, how should they be thinking about it, and what are the steps they can take to get themselves out of the trap?
Very pertinent question. A question I've been asked by 2 different people coaching clients. How do I make sure I'm not going to lose my job and I'm going to have longevity? It's really good timing because I read a book over the weekend. It's called A Whole New Mind by Daniel H. Pink. I got it at an event this weekend and I read it in 2 days flat. It's all about right-brained thinkers, right? So I'd gotten it mixed up. Left brain is more like analytical, math, etc. Right brain is associated with more like creativity, storytelling, etc. What was fascinating is I think so much of what is in this book is what I think also differentiates you and I that have done very well in our RevOps careers, because while we're generalists, we also have niche areas. You're probably much more technical than I am. I would never be that, but I have a very data-oriented mind, led BI teams. And I also am really strong at strategy and integrated strategy, right? Really thinking with end user in mind. I think that's a real spike. But what Daniel Pink talks about is all of these layers of right-brain thinkers. And a few of the things that stick out to me are, number one, story. I think I just saw that like OpenAI is hiring a content story person. They're trying to train their models on how do we tell effective stories. If you think about it in the world of RevOps, we have to tell stories. We have to tell stories for why something should happen or why something happened in the business and what it means. Beyond there was a 50% drop in X rate and it was driven by X, like the why, and then the what we will do about it. These more nuanced aspects to buttress these harder skills that we've had, the systems and the data, which I will share. A lot of more, I don't want to say junior, but earlier to mid-stage RevOps practitioners that I work with or that come to me and that I coach or that I go in and we need you to level up this person, are still stuck there. And it's fine. They're there because that's what got them to that point, being the strongest system admin and the one who really understood the architecture and knew all the bells and whistles and could write the Python and the code. But those things are now being automated by machines. They're just going to continue to be. So how do you differentiate on top of that? That's just a core skill you have to have. Another one that they talk about is symphony, which I feel like is a new way of thinking about RevOps. And it's really somebody who can identify patterns really well, who can think across the business, systems thinking. I always say in my mission for RevOps teams that my team understands the leverage and the linkage points across the business, AKA there are certain KPIs you want to influence. Those KPIs trace to data factors, which are probably the leverage points, but those leverage points are influenced and impacted by different linkages across the business. So if you can trace that all the way back, that's where the change happens. But who has that vantage point? And it's people who can really think broadly across the business very quickly. Those are the ones who I think are at least going to last much longer than the ones who just stick with the very basic operating skills that are going to be taken over by a machine.
The stage zero thinking, basically. If I can summarize all of it and also bring us all the way back to the beginning. No, that makes perfect sense. It's one of the things that I always used to do, be the lucid chart, find where the holes are to the stage zero conversation. It's that. And it's
the complexity, because maybe it's not as direct. It's this thing I usually find out in conversation is influenced by this and this and this. It's not documented anywhere. Once it is documented, ChatGPT, they can all learn that. But until the knowledge management repository grows at pace with the business, humans are going to have to decipher that. until we have recorders around every part of us.
Thank you. I feel like we could go for another 2 hours.
A couple of comments and a thank you. One, as a former fractional CMO, I think one of the things that I see with the way that you approach your clients is providing perspective and allowing them to see things in a new way through a new lens. I think that's really important. It's one of the most valuable things that a fractional executive can do. Great work on that front. Final question, where can people learn more about you and Ignite? And as important, why should they come to you? How are you going to help them?
So you can find me igniteconsulting.co, not .com. That's my website. You can find me on Fords. And then you could also find me on RevOps Village. It's a Google group. Just Google RevOps Village and it'll push you there. And then how to help. I publish a lot of content in my RevOps Village and we record everything. If you're a member, you can delve into revenue related topics. I did 2 webinars with 2 other fractional executives about setting up your fractional businesses. Those are the main things. If you're looking for a community and you identify as a woman, come join us at Pavilion and Women Pavilion.
This has been awesome, Anne.
Thank
If you, the audience, found this conversation valuable, we'd love your support. Be sure to subscribe to The Lift wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave a quick review. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.